Hello and welcome, everybody. Thank you all for joining us today. At College Promise, we work hard to build broad public support for funding the first 2 or more years of post-secondary education for hardworking students and ensuring that students have access to quality educational opportunities and supports. All throughout September, we're hosting events just like this for college students, high school students, their family members, and supporters of students. These workshops range from topics from mental health and wellness to college planning, managing debt, and opportunities to provide tools and advice and strategies so students have what they need in this unprecedented school year. I also want to let you know, and we'll post the link later on also in the chat, that we recently launched a series of research reports specifically around depicting the ecosystems of support and financial sustainability for 5 college promise populations. In support of these reports, which we did in partnership with ETS, College Promise is releasing 5 new policy briefs that really talk about the ways that we can better support student populations. The first 5 reports focus specifically on traditional age students, adult students, student veterans, undocumented students, and justice impacted students. We will link them in the chat. I hope you find them interesting. We think it does a very good job of talking about the unique both opportunities and challenges student populations face and ways supportive services can make a huge difference in their lives. Earlier this year, we also published a COVID-19 resource guide for student families, K-12 teachers, and administrators, inclusive of college faculty, post-secondary institutions, and nonprofit organizations. This guide is quite holistic, is updated regularly, and we hope that it's helpful to you. We'll post a link to it also in the chat, and we ask that if there's any organizations or supportive services that you have found helpful, please let us know. We would like to update the resource guide and make sure that it stays current with all of the wonderful resources available across the country. For students across the country, especially those facing challenges already threatening their college accessibility and affordability, we feel it's very important for us to take the time to host sessions such as this, because we know with COVID pandemic, the game has changed. Situations that were difficult have somehow exponentially become even more exacerbated by the current conditions. And at the same time, new opportunities for many adult workers or individuals that didn't see themselves necessarily attending college are suddenly finding great opportunities to go back to school, to look at retraining, or to think about a new future altogether. So we want you to know, as you participate and you listen to our speakers today, that we're bringing forward to you individuals that not only do we trust, but that we know have students' best interest at heart. And so with that, I want to introduce to you today's moderator. We could not be more proud to have Farhad Asghar, who's our program manager and is also the Carnegie Corporation of New York's Pathways to Post-Secondary Success Program Officer, with us today. He manages Pathways to Post-Secondary Success portfolio. He oversees grant making and supportive services. But at the end of the day, I will tell you, he's an individual that cares about this work. He cares about you, and he is the first person we thought of to moderate this panel, but also we knew he would make time because he prioritizes the type of work that our organizations are doing. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Farhad. And Farhad, we're very grateful for your time today, and we look forward to a wonderful discussion.
Thanks, Rosie. That is a wonderful greeting. I think we should end the webinar now. Kidding aside, thank you so much for this kind introduction. And on behalf of our president, Vartan Gregorian, I'm also so pleased to celebrate College Promise's 5th year anniversary. Just a little bit about Carnegie. We were established in 1911 by Andrew Carnegie to promote the advancement and diffusion of knowledge and understanding. And it's in that spirit that we're participating today as well. Our education program strives to promote a public education system which prepares all students to be active participants in the robust democracy, to be successful in the global economy. And I, as Rosie said, I have the honor and privilege of being the program officer for the Pathways to Post-Secondary Success portfolio, which is all about enabling success in post-secondary learning via multiple pathways that honor the needs of students and local communities. And this is why we're such huge supporters of the College Promise campaign. Promise programs have the potential to provide students with the supports they need to access and complete their education and prepare for the demands of the changing workforce. So again, it's a great privilege to kick off this session. As Rosie said, the purpose of today is to share practical information on choosing the next steps that students need to think about in their education plan, and including potential pitfalls to avoid and options students may not have considered before COVID. So we're about to speak with some amazing college counseling experts about topics like alternative higher education pathways, predatory institutions, and college planning. Our expert panelists today are Dr. Blake Ellis of the Phi Theta Kappa Honor Society, Dr. Keisha Taylor from NAF, and Tanya Yang, the Vice President for Veterans Education Success. We're going to kick it off with each panel is giving us an overview of their organization and identifying some of the pitfalls students might be encountering and perhaps one thing students can do. I'll start with Dr. Taylor.
Hi, everyone. My name is Keisha Taylor, and I work at NAF. And the wonderful part of working at NAF is we work with high school students across the country, helping them get ready for college or career opportunities. And we work in over 35 states. And one of the things that we try to do throughout our curriculum is to try to provide students with an opportunity to explore college and career pathways in high school, really determining what they want to do, what problems they want to solve, and really figuring out where they might take their next steps and offering a variety of those opportunities within our career academies. And so one of the things that I would want everybody listening today to think about is thinking about what real problem you see and what you want to solve, and thinking about how you might go after it. And so I'm proud to be the post-secondary and partnership engagement senior director over at NAF, and I'm looking forward to helping and guiding in any way that I can today.
Thank you, Dr. Taylor. Dr. Ellis, let's keep it going.
Hey, everyone. Thank you to College Promise for providing this opportunity for us to talk about student success and pathways and the barriers that can be overcome. It's going to be an engaging and fun afternoon of talking about this. Phi Theta Kappa is the honor society for community college students. We are about 102 years old, which, as I know a number of you know, is probably unusual for a nonprofit to be that old and to have really stayed focused on our mission, which is to recognize successful college students in a variety of ways, and then to help them grow as scholars and as leaders. We have over 3.5 million members. We are at almost every community college throughout the United States. We have partnerships of various kinds with almost over 1,000 universities. And so we have kind of an interesting window into what's happening in higher education right now. And I will say, before even moving forward on the panel, that we know this is a unique moment, but I think it's a moment that is already highlighting things that we knew and that were happening within higher education on two sides. One, the barriers that are systemic, that we all in this space work every day to break down. But then on the other hand, the resilience of our students who fight every single day for a college degree or for a credential or for a pathway into the middle class. And we're here to support you. Phi Theta Kappa, we do our part to do that. And I'll talk a little bit more about that today. But it's a pleasure to be here, and I look forward to getting this discussion going.
Thanks, Dr. Ellis. And Tanya, bring it home, please.
That's better, right? Hi, everyone. I'm Tanya, and I'm Vice President at Veterans Education Success. We have been around for since about 2013, and we provide support for service members, veterans, and their families who might need help with issues such as having attended a college that closed and applying for reinstatement of their GI Bill benefits, to doing policy and advocacy for student veterans and service members and their family members on the Hill, and then offering doing some work around helping students find ways to make better informed decisions as it relates to higher education. I do think that one thing that, as we've talked about, there's a lot that's come up through COVID related to ways schools could look at and change how they're able to support military connected students as a whole. And I think that that those are definitely showing up. One thing I will say is when I talk to student veterans around the country, I often hear, "Oh, it's too late. I didn't do well in high school. I tried to take 1 or 2 classes in college and that did not go well. I'm just not college material." And the one thing I would like everyone to take away with is that is that it's never too late. And just because you had a bad experience in the past does not mean that you're not capable of actually doing really great work moving forward. And actually, statistics show student veterans and military connected students tend to do just as well, if not better, than their peers. And so it's never too late, and you absolutely can do it.
Tanya, thank you so much. I'm going to stay with you for the first question. This is such a troubling time for students trying to navigate the future of their education and finances amidst COVID. Many are exploring alternative paths, especially veterans and other folks from different populations. How can students avoid the schemes of predatory colleges and loans?
Good question. We've students using GI Bill benefits and military benefits in general tend to be targeted more so by lower quality and more predatory type institutions of higher learning, just because of their benefits. And so we're starting to see some trends coming up with advertising specifically related to COVID and online coursework and flexible schedules and special military discounts. Like we've started to see kind of an uptick in some of that kind of advertising. And there's a few things. The first and foremost thing to remember is that most schools at this point now are online. They are offering online courses in community college and 4-year state schools and private nonprofits. Everyone is offering coursework online. So those are not the only schools offering those classes now. So don't get pulled into we're the only ones that are going to be able to meet your needs, because that's not true. There's a lot of other opportunities. The other one is being pressured. There's a lot when we talk to students who've been impacted by schools that have lied to them. One of the number one things we hear on a consistent basis is there's high pressure tactics to enroll right away. Oh, there's one more seat left. We got to get you in right now. This is your only chance, and we want you in this class, and you're going to do so well. And a lot of times, military connected students in general will say, oh, I didn't do well in school in high school, and all of a sudden this college wants me and they're heavily pursuing me, and so this must be the right college for me. And so if they're putting that kind of pressure on you, then that is not the right college for you. Instead, take your time. A high quality school that's going to help you make good use of your benefits is going to be one that's going to encourage you to take your time and do research and dig into what are their graduation outcomes like? What is their employment like? What are people, where are people going once they graduate? And talk to local employers. We offer some support. You can always reach out to me and I can help. And then there's Service to School, which offers peer-to-peer advising for students as they're going through that whole process. So there are resources out there. Just don't fall for the high pressure. You got to enroll right now, because you don't have to. You don't want to.
Thanks, Tanya. And just a reminder, in the chat, our College Promise colleagues have been pasting links to all of these resources that our colleagues will be sharing. Dr. Taylor, same question. How can students avoid some of these pitfalls?
And so, again, working with high school students and preparing them for the opportunities, I think it's really important to think about your financial literacy experience, even if it's from middle school, and thinking about the beginning of high school, thinking about what it is that you can truly afford, and thinking about how you might look at in your schools for resources and adults who may be able to give you some advice. I think it's really important to think about your network, your neighbors, think about any of the staff members in your community that might be able to give you some advisement on what it is that you want to do and how you think you might be able to get there, and think about the many different varied paths that you can, thinking about what Tanya mentioned about, high pressure sales. We know that, just like when you're trying to sell, buy timeshare, you don't want to go with the high pressure sale. You want to go with what you believe is the right thing for you. And so taking your time, doing your research is really important. And there's so many resources online that you can take a look at different checklists in terms of making those decisions. I think that this is a really, really strange time, and everyone is looking to capitalize on going into schools of higher learning and post-secondary options, but really stick to what it is that I really think I can do, where do I see myself in another year or two, and to take the time to do the research.
Thank you, Dr. Taylor. That's a really fundamental piece of this, taking the time to develop your questions as well. Dr. Ellis, same question to you. Any feedback and tips for our students to avoid the schemes of predatory colleges and loans?
Yeah, I absolutely want to speak up for our publicly funded community colleges in this moment, because what the other panelists have said is absolutely right. That, we are in a moment where it's a bit confusing. And I know if you're a student watching this, we probably as a society have not done as great of a job as we could to make it clear which opportunities are productive, for your career. And so you have to be smart in making those decisions. And I want to say this as clearly as I can to the students that are fighting so hard to continue their education and to earn a credential or a degree. You're not a market to be exploited. You're a community resource that benefits all of us. And I know that your local community college is able to serve you. In this moment, how that service looks is just different. And so self-advocacy and kind of pushing forward is going to be key, because it's happening online. You need to find your college and see, do they have virtual office hours? Do they have a chat feature that you can utilize to make sure that your courses you're taking line up with your major? Is there a way you can connect with the financial resources at the school to make sure that you're getting every dollar possible to continue your education? All of us in our lives, in our parenting, in our marriages, in our how we consume entertainment, it's all changed, and we're all figuring it out as we go. That is likely true at whatever institution of higher education, higher learning you're at. And so I encourage you, while yes, on the one hand, it would be nice if everything was lined up so perfectly. In higher ed, it really never has been, and it's just not. You have got to, as students, figure out those resources, because if you can connect with someone that's at your college, they're going to be able to guide you through in a way that is productive. And so I do encourage you to do that. Also do just want to, kind of remind everyone that when it comes to digital credentials and kind of alternative paths, there's a lot of ways that a student can make a career work. And so I want to honor and respect the ways that you do that. In the process, be smart, be thoughtful, and interact with your publicly funded community colleges in any chance you get.
Dr. Ellis, thank you so much for that thoughtful response. I'm going to stick with you for our second question. Given that everything seems to be upside down, our schools, the economy, jobs, some students may be thinking about taking a gap year, and a lot of data is showing that a lot of students may not fully understand what a gap year might look like or mean. So switching majors or even changing schools. And given your prowess on the community college side, where a lot of young people transfer, what advice would you have for a student thinking about shifting their plans when it comes to gap year, switching majors, or even changing schools?
That is a very good and very tough question in this particular moment. So let me just start by addressing the so-called traditional academic calendar. If you're watching this and you're not aware, I will let you know there is no such thing. My first field was as a historian, so I can speak with some authority on 20th century higher education. And the traditional academic calendar has always been changing. We've always been trying to make it work for the students and the economy that we have at the time. So if you are a student and you're not sure what your path looks like in this moment, you're not alone. And if you feel that maybe you missed your chance because it's the middle of September, that is not true. Colleges are always reaching out, not just to enroll students, but to figure out the best path that they can be on. I return to this subject of lining up your course of study with the career goals that you have. I came of age, I guess, at a time where I grew up believing that I would get one degree that would lead to one career, and that I would be X career for the rest of my life. I think you all know that that is just not how the economy works. Probably wasn't even back then. Maybe no one told me, but it has not worked that way for quite a long time, if it ever did. The students that I see succeeding always are facing historic barriers, no doubt, but they're also finding ways to add skills that they can then demonstrate and document for colleges, universities, employers, community partners, whatever their goal is, whoever it is that you want to be, whatever it is that you want to be, you need skills, and they need to be constantly added and refreshed. and you need to document those in the best ways that you possibly can. A big part of what we do at Phi Theta Kappa is not just honoring and recognizing students for their academic achievements, but helping them add those credentials. We've had some success with, we've just this year given thousands of digital credentials for very specific skills that students actually need, whether they want to get a job, whether they want to transfer, whether they want to do both, which is lots of our students. And so if you are thinking about, a gap year or kind of piecing together what all this will look like, that's okay. But I want to encourage you to put thought into it, make a plan, ensure that if you are taking credits, they really line up with what it is that you want to achieve, and then reach out to the resources that you have to make sure, there's nothing more, I think, demoralizing than working hard at something, particularly a credit, and then figuring out that it wasn't exactly what you needed. So on the front end, make a plan, advocate for yourself, and then you'll achieve, I think, be better positioned to achieve that academic success, which will launch your career of gaining skills over and over again.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ellis. Tanya, again, given the unique position that so many of our veterans find themselves in, and if you'll forgive me, it seems like these are incredible people who are walking in a major shift in their lives into education. So can you give some advice, or what's the advice you would have for students thinking about shifting their plans, again, with gap year, switching majors, or even changing schools?
So I think there's a few things to consider. The first is that it's okay to take a gap year if you need to be, because if you need to take time to kind of figure out what your next steps are, instead of, as Dr. Ellis had talked about, wasting time taking coursework that's not going to transfer, it's okay to take some time to reestablish and reprioritize what it is you want to do and where you want to go with that. That said, and my daughter is not a veteran, but did completely shift where she's going with her higher education. And she did take this year to go to a community college where it was going to be significantly less expensive for her. We worked with the schools she's interested in transferring to. She's looking at a different 4-year than what she originally started at. And so we reached out to those schools and asked them, are these courses going to transfer to your school, and would they meet your requirements? And so that's the first thing to do. It's, community college is a great opportunity to take some coursework that meets general education requirements and helps you kind of maybe take classes. The benefit of general education requirements, because I hear a lot of people kind of like rag on those a little bit, but the benefit of those is to help you find where your passion is, what's interesting to you, and then move forward. And you may not have thought about that to begin with. So a lot of times when people transition out of the service, there's a big push to put them into a similar occupation that they were while serving. And whenever I speak with a room of veterans, I'll ask them, and I've had up to 500 veterans in a room where I've said, how many of you are doing what you did when you were in the military? I have never had more than 2 or 3 people raise their hands in an entire room. So it is okay to shift, to relook at those things, but you look at then the transferable skills that Dr. Ellis talked about. And the thing about military connected students, for service members and student veterans, and even for spouses, there are a lot of transferable skills that you already have that came to you, that was like provided for you during training, during the MLS or rating, whatever service you were in, during your experience in the military. And so looking at your joint services transcript and saying, hey, what skills do I have? Do any of these transfer to schools? Will schools accept them? And then finding ways to translate your military skills into civilian language. And so the JST is a great opportunity to do that. The language, when I used to work on the JST, and we would always translate that information to civilian language, and we would always tell everyone, plagiarize, take what we've written so you can put that into a document. Work with schools on credit for prior learning. There's just lots of different ways in schools and programs that create bridge and pathways that incorporate military training and experience into degree programs. There's a number of them with community colleges, 4 years. They all have, a lot of them have those types of options.
Tanya, thank you so much. Dr. Taylor, same question for you in terms of the advice you have for young people, students thinking about shifting their plans.
Yeah, I think this is the time to take a look at where you are, what you have, and what questions are still out there. There are so many different variables and the unknown. I think as you prepare to think about what the next steps are, thinking about, even the current job you may have, the job you had before March, any of those opportunities that look interesting, or show your creativity are ways that you kind of connect some of those skills that you've developed. I think at NAF we like to call them power skills, thinking about what you get through a work experience, think about what you want to connect to in that next phase, and taking a look again. And I'm really passionate about thinking about the problem you want to solve. I think our young people, people who of course have had some experience in the world, it's important to think about how you want to be a part of any of the solutions that may come about. We're in a place where we can think about jobs that don't even exist yet, the skills that we bring to the table with what is happening in our current environment, and there's a lot of interest. And I think in terms of documenting what we do, I think Tanya and Dr. Ellis kind of spoke to that. Think about what it is that you can document and archive to make you also, stand out and be unique. There's so many different ways to do that, whether or not it's your social media platform, whether or not it's, thinking about your journaling and how you might want to convey a message of what it is that you bring to the table, whether it is thinking about taking a step into higher education or thinking about other post-secondary programs. I mean, one of the things at NAF that we think about a lot is thinking about apprenticeship programs and different ways to show that you're an entrepreneur. So just the varied options. I think the time to reflect is good if you're thinking about a gap year and thinking about how do you tell that story on the other side of the experience, whether it's 6 months, whether it's a year. What is it you're going to say about that time? What skills did you gain? And what reflections can you articulate about that experience without just saying, I played around, I just worked. Well, all those things are good. So tell me, in PlayStation, did you think about, how you're going to add a new feature to whichever game you liked, whether or not you worked at a grocery store? What is it that you really were fascinated about customer service? So thinking about how you make those connections is really powerful as you think about the time that you need to take to step away to determine what the future holds for you.
That's beautiful. I'm going to stick with you, Dr. Taylor. And we're halfway done and we're doing great. So before we go to the next question, can you just share a little bit more about the practices that you've implemented or plan to implement as you support students? Dr. Taylor, you were talking about the myriad of ways you support young people in their journeys. So what does that look like, the way you implement the support for students as they head into their first or next year of school?
Yeah, so again, working with high school students and working with our phenomenal educators across the country. NAF is in 35 states. We have over 112,000 students in our pipeline. Thinking about the resources we can provide our educators and our counselors with to provide the varied options out there. I think one of the things that we realize is that teachers need support as we work with high school students, thinking about what their next steps are. And we have a alumni engagement opportunities where we provide different resources related to once you graduate high school, what are some of the ways that we can help you network, where you can ask questions of other professions, where we have corporate partners who want to engage with our students and in terms of kind of continued mentoring opportunities. And then again, thinking about those places and spaces where you can seek advisement. I think, giving our educators those materials that they can share with their students, but also providing in our alumni connections ways that we can support our students as they make these different transitions is how we're looking to support our network of students and beyond.
Thank you so much, Dr. Taylor. Tanya, similarly, given, again, the unique nature of returning veterans, what are some of the practices that you have developed to help veterans and other students support them as they head into their first year of school or continue school?
So a lot of the work we've done has been primarily with colleges and universities, and we've partnered the students with those colleges and universities, as well as with different programs. So one program that's available is called Warrior Scholar Project, and what they do is they provide boot camps for service members and veterans who are looking to go to college, and it gives them the opportunity to get train like humanities. So they'll read through books, and then they'll write up a paper, and it'll be critiqued by professors at top tier schools, and they'll give them some writing skills, because if you haven't written in a while, sometimes you need to kind of build those back up. They also have a STEM program that focuses on science, technology, engineering, and math to kind of refresh some of those skills. So there are programs that are out there that we oftentimes will encourage students to look at and attend. But additionally, what we've wanted to do is we've wanted to work with the students as they're getting ready to take like the AccuPlacement tests, and help them find access, help them go to Khan Academy and different places like that to prep for those tests, so that they're not having to take coursework that's not going to lead to a degree once they're actually enrolled in the school. And then we've worked very closely with colleges and universities to find ways to better engage their military connected student population. So it's not just like getting students onto the campus, it's then providing that support as students are going through. And so there's a lot to be said. I will almost always encourage, actually every single time I've encouraged someone that I've been doing pre-enrollment advising with. So prior to applying to a school, and once they get in, I'll tell them, okay, get connected with your Student Veteran Association on your campus, get connected with your school certifying official who will help you get your GI Bill benefits, and then ask if they know of their veterans that have been in school for a while that you can connect with, so that so that you're not by yourself. So that a lot of times when you have veterans or service members who are coming on campus, the experiences are not going to be similar to that of almost anyone else there. If they've served overseas or they've experienced things that no one else does. And so sometimes there's a little bit of an uncomfortable feeling being in these environments. And so finding other peers that are also veterans and service members, finding faculty or staff who also served, are really good ways to kind of help navigate, especially that first year. And then I also strongly encourage them to take advantage of the services that are available for them. And sometimes it's not always like right in front of their face. And so there's tutoring, there's disability services. And this is the big one that we get a lot of, well, I don't, there's people that are in worse conditions than I am, or there's whatever. I have 2 of my 3 kids who have IEPs, and I make them be proud of it. Go get that support, go get those extra support services, because what that will do is give you a little bit of extended time on taking tests, or it will provide extra tutoring or extra time on homework, or your teachers are oftentimes very supportive and helpful in those things. So those are some of the things that we do.
Tanya, thank you so much. I'm trying to speak into my mic because my volume is a little bit low. But Dr. Ellis, same question for you. Some of the practices that you've implemented or plan to implement as you think about the supports the student needs. And specifically at the top of our conversation, Rosie talked about not just the financial supports that young people need, and our friends at College Promise campaign are deploying nationally so well. The additional work around wraparound services that we all need, right? We're not just students, we're full intact human beings. And with that, we bring a full complement of needs and necessary kind of resources that we need. So yeah, take that question and just dive a little bit more.
That's so important, and I couldn't agree more with the way that you framed that, because student learning doesn't happen in a vacuum, right? It happens in the context of life, and it happens in the context of trying to add particular skills for a career goal. And this is something I think that we have learned at Phi Theta Kappa and tried to respond really thoughtfully to fill the gap. We have, as some of you know, almost 1,300 chapters. So all across the country and the world, there are chapter activities taking place that help students grow. They do research, they work with their college administrations to create changes on campus, they do service projects, and these are some of the best, brightest, most engaged students in the country. What we've learned through that experience is that often the part that is gaining credentials is sort of set up. Take this class and then you will gain this particular credential. But there are all sorts of things that students aren't naturally taught as a part of that experience that we have worked hard to fill the gap. What we call it is our PTK Edge programs. And these are online courses where students get digital credentials that demonstrate skills they've gained. And they focus, we believe, on the biggest needs for especially community college students. So for example, we have a program called Employment Edge that's all about how you actually get a job. This is the elevator pitch, this is interviewing, this is salary negotiation, which is something that too often we see white males like myself feel comfortable walking in and saying, okay, I want to do this. And we often will, counsel students who have not been trained to go in and advocate for themselves, that has got to take place, and someone has to teach people to do that. And so we walk students through that in our Employment Edge program. We have Transfer Edge, which is about how you transfer. And this is something that I think, and we partner with several organizations for the content to make this happen. So many students say they want to transfer, and we, I hope, would all agree that community college students, which are our most diverse group of college students in the country, that we know perform well when they arrive at university. I think we would all agree this is a big part of expanding opportunity within higher education, getting community colleges to students to transfer. They're often not taught how to do that. How do you write a transfer essay? Some of these things we've learned as we've gone through this and we've reached out to the experts. How do you make your credits line up with your major, and how does that factor into the application and admission decision? How do you even search for college? We do a lot about helping students figure out, which colleges are really going to be there for them. I am reminded, and I say this all the time, I'm reminded of this line in Michelle Obama's book, Becoming, where she talks about being a Black woman at Princeton at a time when she was one of the very few Black women there. She said she thought that the universities were happy to have her there, but the burden of integration fell on the students that were doing the integrating. And that's kind of a problematic thing. So we try really hard to get people to think not just about welcoming transfer students, but imagining what it might be like to step foot on a campus. I was just earlier today talking to one of our former students that's at Columbia, and he is, just so impressive in the ways that he is jumping into life at Columbia, but it's because he's taken the courses and we've really prepared him and taught him how to do that. So we're passionate about that. We also have programs on things like research. We have a soft skills, kind of essential skills program that really centers discussions of diversity, equity, and inclusion that are needed for whatever job or whatever higher education experience you get. And so for us, it's going beyond just the chapter experience and even beyond the scholarships, because it's not a secret that Phi Theta Kappa partners with universities, hundreds and hundreds of universities that offer our members automatic scholarships, in some cases, in many other cases, merits-based scholarships when they enter the university. But we offer our own scholarships. And that's a kind of a reason that many members will join, but they need more than money. They need to be taught how to do these things, those wraparound services that you mentioned. And that's what we try really hard to provide at the chapter level and through our student success army of advisors, but also directly to the students through online programs. And that's how I would answer that question.
Thanks so much, Dr. Ellis. We have about 20 minutes left. I have a couple more questions, and we're going to turn to some audience questions first. But Dr. Taylor, just picking up from where Dr. Ellis was talking about, navigating the known knowns and also kind of being aware of some of the unknown unknowns, if you will, to kind of think a little bit about First Lady Michelle Obama's point about showing up on campus with the wrong types of sheets, for example, right? Nobody told her that was part of it. What's your vision, Dr. Taylor, on helping young people just navigate some of those struggles and keep a forward-thinking perspective as they plan these next steps, not knowing what those steps might even lead to?
Great question. They're my own personal experiences that I certainly can draw from and share. I think one thing I would say is that there's so much more out in the literary community that help us prepare for some of these unknowns, and many more people sharing their story and their journey and their path where it maybe for some people think it's very easy. I think obviously as a former English teacher, I certainly have a passion for reading, whether it's novels or biographies or articles. And I do think that it's important to think about some of the challenges that we experience, because from high school, from college, from the world of work, there's certain challenges that are certainly going to come up. And preparing ourselves with others' stories, if we can't share our own in the beginning, is really important to think about. And so certainly I read Becoming, and I identified with a lot of the challenges, Michelle Obama certainly faced. And I think about, being in spaces and places, being, the only African-American woman, and being asked to kind of, present my case for the entire race. And so I think the more articles, the more stories I read that, people had the similar struggle, you realize that you really only have to focus on the important things that are critical to you and what you think may help you be successful. I think, identifying and finding organizations that can prepare you again with that transition to the world of work, to higher education, is really important as well. And there's so many more resources. I went to college in the 90s, and certainly I feel like it's very, very different. Having a college freshman myself, thinking about all the resources and organizations that he has access to that I did not. But I do think you have to be interested in seeking those out, and knowing that, this is not a time to by any stretch feel uncomfortable, but to really feel empowered, and to know that the more we read, the more we hear other stories and hear others' voices, the more empowered we can feel to make those informed decisions, and to think about what the unknowns are, and to know that you possess really the power and capacity and creativity to be the person who can be the solution. And not just, a beneficiary, but really be the one to hold the power to be the one to find solutions to our problems.
Beautifully said, Dr. Taylor. And as a former English teacher, appreciate the shout out, Dr. Ellis. Tanya, I want to build off Dr. Taylor's point about the way higher ed has even shifted. I still remember, I'm a first-gen American, first-gen college student, and sitting in that lecture hall where the typical, the professor says, look to your left, look to your right. One of those folks won't be there, which was like a horrible thing for me to hear as someone who was super scared to be in that space and didn't even feel like I belonged on some level there. I can imagine, and this is coming from a place of empathy, not from a place of assumptions, that our veterans quite often show up in these spaces with similar dynamics. Can you speak to Dr. Taylor's point about how we help veterans and other students navigate these spaces in ways that they can be successful?
So I always go back to a story of a student that I spoke with who was at a school that was known for being very supportive of the military community. So the first one is basic things such as making it readily available on your websites and forward-facing material that there are support services for student veterans and other military connected students, because a lot of times you have to dig and dig and dig and dig before you find that information. And so basic kinds of information, like basic things like that, so simple, but and such an easy thing to do, but makes a huge difference. But in this case, there was a group of student veterans in one class together, and it was a history class. And on the first day of class, within the first 15 minutes, the professor went on a rant about how he completely disagreed with war, and shared all of the opinions and all of the thoughts on that. And he lost those students. I mean, the students were stuck in his class. They're committed, like veterans are very much committed. So once they make a decision, they're going to stick with it. So they stuck with that class, but I can tell you they were lost. And so it's something as simple as just understanding that, like, the people in your class are going to be different. The people on your campus are going to be different than your own experiences. And so while we might have the freedom to share our opinions, that's not always what we need to be doing. Instead, we need to be listening and hearing what other people are doing. And then going back to, again, just the whole creating opportunities and spaces where student veterans can come together and kind of support each other through this process, and then creating opportunities for integration. I'm actually reading Becoming right now, and just finished that whole part of it of her at school, and that stood out to me too. Like, it's not, I mean, we all have a personal responsibility to find ways to engage with others on campus, but it's hard. As I returned as an adult to go back to school for grad program, and it was hard. It was scary. And so it took some time for me to be in the classes and to kind of feel like I belonged and not like a fish out of water. And my professors and some of my classmates and some of the staff on the campus did a really good job of making me feel like I wasn't like this fish out of water. I didn't stand out. And so I think there's a communal need, not just for student veterans and service members, but for post-secondary learners and first generation students. I also was a first generation student. Like, there's this communal need of needing to be aware that we're not all the same. We're all different. We all have our strengths. We all have our weaknesses. We all have areas where we need help and support. And so having some compassion and empathy and humility, I think, goes a long way.
Well said. And that reminds me, I was speaking to a dean from Framingham State University, and they actually did an outstanding job of helping identify staff and faculty on campus that were first gen themselves to raise their hand and say, you know what? And it turned out it was a significant portion of their staff and faculty, and they used that as a way to kind of create community. We're going to turn to our wonderful audience questions. We're going to start with you, Dr. Ellis. We had just came in hot off the presses. How can we find which schools are directly partnered with PTK to find scholarships and more?
That's a great question. And so there's two parts of it. So on the first part is, if you're looking for a community college that has a Phi Theta Kappa chapter, I'll post a link where you can search by state and just easily identify your chapter, and then also the advisors and the college president and the people you should reach out to at that particular college. Your advisors being the best example of who you should reach out to. If you are looking for university partners, of which there are many, we have something, and I'll post there as well, called PTK Connect. And this is our college search engine for our PTK members. And you're able not just to see if they have a PTK scholarship, you're able to see if they have scholarships designated specifically for transfer students. You're able to see how they compare to others. Are they urban, suburban, rural? When does the application process run? How many people go there? How much does it cost? And our tool is very intuitive and I think pretty easy to use. And so it's helpful if you're looking for universities and you're trying to figure out, do they have a PTK scholarship? That's a natural question to see if that's something you can add on to your financial aid package. But it's also helpful, I think, just in getting a feel for what kind of a university you may want to go to. One of the students that I had worked with was an international student from Venezuela, and he just got on there, and he was in Houston, Texas. I said, well, where are you interested in going? He said, I don't know, but he knew that he wanted small class sizes and he wanted it to be as similar to community college as possible. That kind of triggered liberal arts colleges in my mind, because you can tend to have some small classes. He used PTK Connect to end up connecting with Occidental College out in California, which is, of course, a fantastic top-tier liberal arts university. He ended up getting a full ride for last 2 years of undergrad. So there are all sorts of connections that can be made, but I'll post those links in the chat feature. And I will also just say, if you're interested, you have any questions along those lines, you're always able to just email help@ptk.org, and we'll connect you with whatever resources you need. And I'll post that in the chat. Thanks for
at ptkconnect.org.
Help@ptk.org is the email, and then I'll post the links for PTK Connect in the chat.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Dr. Ellis, I'm going to stick with you for the other audience question. Given everything that's going on, is it going to be harder or easier to transfer from colleges? Will there be less or more spots to transfer to? And I'm starting with you, given your connection with community colleges. So again, the question is, will it be harder or easier to transfer to colleges? And will there be more or fewer spots to transfer into?
Well, let me start by just saying, we're all figuring this out, and so I'll give you my best take for where it is now. I said something to someone earlier, and they said, "Where's the data for that?" I was like, "I don't know. It's in my gut. It's just what I'm experiencing." So don't take this, completely to the bank. But I think, the way that you framed it when you started to say, "Is it easier to transition to university versus transfer?" And that's important because I think it might be easier to transfer for a minute but more difficult to truly transition. That's how I would put it, because it is certainly possible that there are going to be more spots. And we do hear from lots and lots of our members that are getting into fantastic land grant research universities, really interesting liberal arts colleges, great, top 100, research universities and elite private institutions. It really runs the gamut. But one thing I think that was already happening in higher education, but that the pandemic has pushed forward, is the need for universities to target and recruit the students that line up with them. If you are, to Tanya's points, a veteran student that is already facing a number of systemic barriers, it is helpful for you to know if a university makes veterans a priority, not just in the language, but in the programs they offer, the support, the financial aid packages, all of those things. And so for students in this short term, I think you're going to see some interesting patterns where maybe people feel that, they're really being sought after by universities. But to our point of self-advocacy at the beginning, you, the college students, make sure that you are not just seeing an email that says, "Okay, we're happy to have you at our university." Are they coming to the table with the resources you need to be successful? Because it's your success.
Okay, Dr. Ellis froze on my
Heavily
screen.
invested in.
Thank you, Dr. Ellis. I'm going to actually turn to Dr. Taylor. We just got another question, and this is open to everybody. How can we become more involved in our school, and how can we become more involved in doing volunteer work through, or even through PTK? But we're going to start with Dr. Taylor generally about getting more involved in school and how we can do more volunteer work.
Sure. I think that's a great question. And I think it's important to find out where the resources are. So whatever school you attend, it's really important to, again, source the website. I think Tanya's earlier point, some sites are easier and accessible for information, but I think, looking to the website for information about volunteer opportunities, I think that's also really critical thing to look for when you're looking at schools in terms of transitioning and transferring. If you have a passion around volunteerism, is this a school that supports that and the many different opportunities that they provide? Listed out in terms of the kinds of organizations that they, would like you to connect with or that you can bring to the table and connect with. I think it's a really important part of your educational journey to make sure you do the things that are important to you. And if you have a passion for volunteerism, really aligning your needs with what an institution offers.
Any creative solutions on managing this during the time of COVID when we're all quarantined in some cases?
Well, I feel like everybody's home. Everybody is available. I think we're all working a lot harder, a lot longer, but to the betterment of our society as a whole. I know that I've reached to universities recently and people are picking up the phone. I've emailed and I'm getting emails, back very quickly. So I do think, young people thinking about where they want to take their next steps, adult learners, where they want to take their next steps, get on the phone, ask questions, have a list of questions that you want to ask and ask for time. Certainly, email, make it official, try to get on folks' calendars. But I feel like I've been having a lot of phone calls and preparing a lot of our young people to do the same as they begin to make their inquiry.
Thank you so much. Tanya, I'm going to ask you the next one. It's kind of in the same vein. Somebody asked, how can I organize my schedule for learning while working a part-time job or the many, many different hats that we all wear?
Good question. So the first one I would say is look for federal work study or different types of work study jobs. There's VA work study for veterans. Like there's different opportunities for that. And that gives you an opportunity to work on campus or to work for VA work study, you can actually work off campus at other locations, and they're typically going to be more flexible with how with your hours based on your schedule that way. Or I worked all the way through college. I worked almost full time. I was taking 20 something units, and it was challenging. So I did a lot of early morning classes, and I did a lot of night classes, and then worked in the middle of the day or on the weekends. So there was it was challenging. I was not a parent, like I was single. I had no other like commitments, but I was able to make it work. And so I think that if you can find employers, if you're working somewhere part-time, you need to let your employer know you're in school, give them your schedule ahead of time, but try to schedule classes to the best of your ability during times. And there were some times where I had to go in the afternoon. And so I would try to get all my classes on Tuesday and Thursday, or Monday, Wednesday, Friday, like so that I would have some of that flexibility. You just got to get creative.
So staying on that vein of creativity, and again, open whoever wants to jump in with this one, we can all imagine the students are very worn out from the online dynamic. You know, I'm on sometimes 12 hours of Zoom calls and then other screens. How do we best support our students in a virtual setting?
This is one of the things, I'll jump in. This is one of the things that has been so fun for me to see as we've moved forward. Our PTK regional coordinators, there's 29 of them, and all of our over 3,000 chapter advisors, our members, are finding such interesting ways to connect. I am a believer in student engagement, that the experiences that people have outside of the classroom to connect with another human being in the context of their learning really does help students stay on the path and persist towards a degree or credential. It is just happening in different ways now. We had last night, our New York region had a kind of a virtual food hall situation where everybody got a gift card. And, you know, you have to embrace some of the new things. I mean, I know it's a little weird. Some of y'all have been taking pictures of your food for many years. You just got to return to that, you know, like, all right, here's my food and we're talking about it. The technology we have is fantastic. And I understand, you know, we're all trying to catch up. We've gotten into the mode where if the internet goes down, the internet goes down. If, you know, Tanya's cat comes in, the cat comes in. You know, these things just happen. Whatever it is that's happening, or dogs, whatever. We have to kind of get out of that mindset that everything has to be perfect. We have to utilize the breakout rooms in every way that we can. There are ways. We've seen people doing, you know, virtual campfires. I try to tell them, we had chapters doing that in clearly in northern climates. I was like, I live in Houston, Texas. The last thing I want is a campfire, virtual or any other way. But they were, roasting virtual marshmallows and kind of talking it out. And I will say, on a serious note, there are students out there that weren't reached by in-person campus activities who are willing to jump on a Zoom. I know for all of us that, yes, that really struggle, and I'm just going to say it, you know, to take showers and to put on pants and to do all those things that are required in, you know, physical meetings. You can jump on a Zoom where you are. And aren't we all about meeting our students where they are? That's a way to do it. Having said that, and I know we all know this, there are still systemic issues to be dealt with in terms of internet access, making sure that not everybody has the perfect Zoom background, and we need to be thoughtful in the process of figuring out how we can fix that. But there are students we can reach through these new mediums.
I would love to, you know, just continue that, Dr. Ellis, you know, great points. I think about the personal connection and thinking about in this time, you know, what really is most important. And when we think about, you know, our needs, right, Maslow, we go back to all of that, you know, thinking about comfort for young people, you know, whether or not it's, you know, the evening time where you're having the opportunity to engage with, you know, students after hours, one-on-one coffee chats, I know is something really, you know, important, where you can try to, you know, have a group, use the breakout room, but also think about what, you know, our young people can bring to the conversation too. So a variety of topics that you may offer up, and then think about how they may engage with each other, but also with, you know, the adult or the educator at the moment. And I think that's really important. I think, you know, Zoom can be on your phone. So, you know, taking a walk and having conversation, you know, outside or in different spaces that are more comfortable to to you also is also a really good way to connect and thinking about how you can learn outside of this space. So the brick and mortar, right, this technology brings us beyond that, and so how do we enhance that and use it as a form of empowerment?
Dr. Taylor, thank you so much. Tanya, I'm going to go to you. We have a few seconds left, but would love to turn to your final piece of advice or reflection. By the way, Emily, our colleague on the call, just put a really wonderful point in the chat just now as well. But Tanya, a piece of reflection or advice from the session, please.
A piece of reflection advice: don't give up, keep going forward, and there are options, there are resources. I think during COVID, like this just really kind of like was hitting me strongly while we were all talking right now, is during COVID, it can be very lonely, and it can be very, you're by yourself a lot. And so take advantage of, these opportunities. As exhausting as Zoom can be, like these are good opportunities to not be alone and reach out. So that's not really in line with what we're talking about, but I think it is when you're talking about student mental health issues and loneliness.
Well said. Dr. Ellis, Dr. Taylor, one piece of final advice?
I'll just jump in to just remind everybody not to confuse the medium with your message, because there is something that you as college students are about, something that makes you so passionate, something that makes you want to set a goal and achieve it. And it sometimes feels a little weird to be ourselves in Zoom. I'll give you an example. I was just like yelling something at my husband, and then the call came on, and I was like a perfect angel, right? Like my went away, and here I was. So we have got to find ways in this medium to continue to be our authentic selves. Whatever it is that makes you passionate and whatever your goals are, express that here with us. Let us see a little bit of who you are, and together we are going to get through this.
Yeah, I think really thinking about where it is that you see yourself in this moment is so important. And it is, I think it's a defining moment for all of us. Making connections is important. I think, Tanya, that, the piece around mental health and social emotional connections, we're human. We like to connect. So, maximize every opportunity to do so. And don't forget to, where you can, step outside and take deep breaths. And I'm really an advocate about practicing grace. There's a lot of pressure points. There's a lot going on, and treating each other with respect and courtesy and practicing grace is really important during this time. And me, I'm going to plug. Continue to read however you can, and that's the way we can travel even without being able to travel. So.
Beautiful reflection, authenticity, grace, and I will add gratitude. And practicing gratitude is really important in this time. So on behalf of the College Promise campaign community, thank you so much to our expert panelists, and thanks for everyone for joining today's webinar. We'll take care, and thank you so much.